I never planned to see her again. Not after the way she looked at me the last time we spoke. Like she was trying to remember my face, but forcing herself to forget it. It had been months since that awkward farewell outside her old brick house. But that afternoon, when my boss handed me the new work order and I saw her name, my throat tightened. "Just a quick plumbing fix," he said. 10 minutes tops. 10 minutes. That's what I told myself, too. The sky was pale and quiet when I parked outside her gate. The air carried that in-between stillness, the kind that makes you hear your own heartbeat. I could see her window, slightly open, a curtain moving with the slow rhythm of the breeze. For a moment, I stood there like an idiot, toolbox in hand, rehearsing how to sound casual. When she opened the door, everything inside me went quiet. "Ethan," she said softly, almost surprised. "You still do this kind of work?" Her voice hadn't changed. Calm, careful, a little uncertain. She was wearing a light blue shirt, sleeves rolled up, her hair tied in a messy bun that somehow made her look even more composed. I tried to meet her eyes, but couldn't hold a stare. "Just helping out for extra cash," I said. "Didn't expect, well, you." Her smile was small, but it lingered. "The sink's been acting up again. Guess it missed you." The house smelled the same, like coffee that had gone cold hours ago and the faint scent of lavender from her hand lotion. The floor creaked under my boots as I followed her to the kitchen. She spoke little. I spoke even less. But the silence wasn't empty. It carried something warm, something dangerous. I knelt down, unscrewing pipes, trying not to think about how her presence filled the room. Every few seconds, I could feel her eyes on me, watching quietly, not in the way people look when they're judging, but when they're remembering. "Still as focused as ever," she said after a while, leaning against the counter. "You used to do that in class, too. Everyone talking, but you just listening." I laughed quietly. I was terrified of saying something stupid. "You never did," she murmured. The wrench slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a sharp clang. For a second, our eyes met, hers soft, almost apologetic. "I didn't mean to make you nervous," she added. "You didn't," I said. "You just make things harder to forget." Her breath caught, just enough for me to notice. She turned away, busying herself with a mug on the counter. But her hands trembled slightly. When the sink finally stopped leaking, I stood up and wiped my hands. "All done," I said. "Shouldn't give you trouble anymore." She smiled, faint but genuine. Then she did something I didn't expect. She stepped closer, close enough that I could feel her breath on my shoulder. Her hand brushed mine, soft, hesitant, and then stayed there. "Ethan," she whispered, eyes glimmering with something between gratitude and fear. "You always know how to make things right." The words hit deeper than they should have. I wanted to say something, anything, but before I could, the doorbell rang. We both froze. Her hand slipped away slowly, like a secret retreating into silence. She looked toward the door, then back at me, torn between opening it and not wanting to move. And in that suspended second, I realized whatever waited behind that door could change everything. The sound of the doorbell faded, but neither of us moved. She just stood there, frozen halfway between guilt and hesitation, her hand still near mine, as if her body hadn't gotten the message to pull away. Finally, she blinked, stepped back, and said, "I should get that." When she opened the door, a neighbor stood there holding a small parcel. They exchanged polite words, nothing important, but her voice was different now, steady and distant. She closed the door gently and turned to me with a faint, practiced smile. "Sorry about that. He always forgets to leave things in the mailbox." I nodded, pretending not to notice how her tone had changed. "No problem." But inside, everything felt louder. The ticking clock, the faint drip from the faucet, I just fixed my own heartbeat hammering in my throat. She gestured toward the table. "You want some coffee before you go?" I hesitated. I should have said no. I didn't. She poured the coffee slowly, hand steady again now. Steam rose between us, and for a moment, It felt like all the air in the kitchen had turned heavy with unspoken history. "Still taking classes?" she asked. I shook my head. "Graduated last year. Been doing part-time work since. Trying to figure things out." She smiled softly. "You always were trying to figure things out." There was warmth in her tone, but also something else. A trace of regret. "Maybe." "And you?" I asked carefully. "Still teaching?" She exhaled, looked down at her cup. "No, not anymore. Took a break last year. Things got complicated." Complicated. The way she said it made the words sound heavier than it should. I didn't press, but the silence that followed carried enough weight to say what she wouldn't. I remembered hearing things back then, whispers about a broken marriage, someone leaving, someone staying out of duty. But I never asked. She was my professor. There were lines, even if I didn't always understand where they were. Now, sitting across from her again, those lines felt blurrier than ever. "You've changed," she said suddenly, catching me off guard. "How so?" "You listen differently. You look at people longer than you used to. Like you're trying to read what they won't say." I smiled faintly. "Maybe that's your fault. You taught me how to do that." She laughed, quietly. That same soft laugh that used to make me lose track of everything she said afterward. But then her expression shifted. Her fingers tapped the edge of the cup. Once, twice, like she was debating something. "Ethan, you being here, it's not exactly," she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "Appropriate," I offered. She looked at me, startled that I said it out loud. "Yeah," she whispered. "That." I should have left right then. But I didn't. Because the way she said it, it wasn't a warning. It was a confession. Her eyes held mine a second too long, and I swear I saw every unspoken thing hiding there. Loneliness, curiosity, fear, and something dangerously close to longing. Without meaning to, I reached out, brushing my fingers across the back of her hand. She didn't pull away. Her voice trembled just slightly when she said, "You should go before I forget what's right." I stood up, but neither of us moved toward the door. And in that still moment, with the fading light spilling through the curtains and her hand resting under mine, I realized that neither of us really wanted to fix the distance we kept pretending was there. I told myself I wouldn't come back. But 3 days later, I was standing at her door again, this time holding the excuse of a follow-up check. She opened it with that same soft, unreadable look. "The sink?" she asked. "Just wanted to make sure it's still behaving," I said, trying not to sound like I'd been thinking about her every night since. She hesitated, then stepped aside. "You can come in." The air inside was different, cooler, tense. The radio was playing something slow and old, the kind of song people don't admit they listen to alone. She moved around quietly, setting a mug on the counter, pretending not to watch me kneel by the sink again. "I thought it was fixed," she said finally. "It was," I replied, not looking up. "Just wanted to be sure." A silence stretched between us, thin and fragile. When I finally turned, she was closer than before. Too close. Her perfume lingered in the air, faint and steady. Her hand brushed the edge of the counter, nervous, unsure of what to do. "Ethan," she said softly, "you shouldn't," but she stopped because her phone started ringing. The sound jolted the room back to reality. She reached for it, her voice tightening as she answered. "Ah, yes, I know. I'll be there soon." A pause. "Of course I miss you too," she said quietly, eyes shifting toward the floor. Her tone changed, polite, distant, rehearsed. When she hung up, the silence that followed was heavier than before. "Your husband?" I asked before I could stop myself. She didn't look at me. But we still talk. Sometimes." I nodded, pretending it didn't sting. She turned, almost whispering, "You shouldn't have heard that." "Then tell me not to care," I said. Her breath caught, and for a second, neither of us moved. Then she took a step closer. Her eyes searched mine like she was looking for a reason not to do what she was thinking. "I can't," she said finally. The words hit harder than any touch could. I wanted to kiss her, right there in that quiet kitchen that suddenly felt too small. And for a moment, just one heartbeat, She leaned in, and the sound of keys rattled outside the door. She froze. The door handle turned, and a man's voice called out, "Maya, you home?" Her face went pale. "It's my brother," she whispered. "He checks in sometimes, just go." I grabbed my toolbox, nearly tripping over the mat. She guided me toward the back door, her fingers trembling against my arm. Before I stepped out, I turned, and she did too. Our eyes met one last time, breathless, unfinished. Neither of us said a word, but everything we couldn't say was right there, in a look that lasted a second too long. Then I slipped out into the cold evening air, my pulse still racing. And behind that door, I could still hear her brother's voice, and her forced laughter trying to cover the storm we'd just created. I tried to forget her. I really did. But every time I turned on a faucet or fixed a pipe, I saw her hand over mine, trembling, warm, pulling away too slowly. I tried to bury it under work, noise, anything, but it stayed, echoing like a quiet heartbeat that wouldn't stop. 3 weeks passed before she called. Her voice was softer this time. "Ethan, there's a leak again." I didn't even think. "I'll be there in 10. When I got to her house, it was raining hard, thunder rolling in the distance, water spilling down her porch steps. She stood by the door, barefoot, wearing an oversized sweater that made her look both fragile and untouchable. "I didn't mean to call," she said. "It just slipped out." "I didn't mean to come," I replied. "But here we are." The power flickered as I stepped inside. The rain was loud enough to drown everything else out. She followed me to the kitchen, watching as I crouched by the sink again. My hands were steady, but my thoughts weren't. Every move, every sound felt charged, like the air before lightning strikes. Finally, she said it, the thing she'd been holding back since that day. "My brother asked about you," she murmured. "He said you looked too young to be doing this kind of work." I stayed quiet. "He's right," she added. "You are too young for all of this." I turned in, slowly. "Too young to care." She flinched like I'd touched something raw. "Too young to understand what it costs." Her voice cracked slightly, and that was it. The moment she broke through her calm facade. She looked tired, not of me, but of herself, of whatever lines she kept drawing and erasing in her mind. "I've made enough mistakes for 2 lifetimes," she whispered. "You shouldn't be one of them." The words stung. "So that's what I am, a mistake waiting to happen." "No," she said, shaking her head, eyes shining with something close to tears. "You're the part one can't stop thinking about." I froze. She realized what she'd said, too late. Her hand went to her mouth, as if she could take the words back. "Maya," I started, but she cut me off. "This, whatever this is, can't go anywhere. It's wrong. It's selfish." "Then tell me you don't feel it," I said, stepping closer. She tried to look away, but her breath caught, and for the first time, she didn't. "Ethan." Her voice was barely a whisper. I could feel the pull between us, magnetic, inevitable. Her fingers brushed mine, trembling but not moving away. Outside, thunder crashed again, shaking the windows. We stood there, inches apart, the air thick with everything unsaid. And just as she leaned forward, barely, almost, a sharp knock echoed from the front door. We both froze. The spell shattered, but the ache stayed. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but the words never came. Then she whispered, "Don't answer it." Not yet. The knocking didn't stop. It grew sharper, more impatient. She pulled her hand back like she'd been burned and whispered, "Stay here." Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. I stood frozen as she walked toward the door, smoothing her hair, forcing a calm she didn't feel. When she opened it, I caught only fragments of the voice outside, low, familiar male. Then I heard it clearly. "Your phone's been off all day, Maya." I was worried. Her ex-husband. He stepped inside before she could stop him. He looked like someone who had once belonged here. Coat hanging loosely, eyes tired but kind. The kind of man who thinks he still has time to fix what's already broken. "I just came to drop off the paperwork," he said, placing an envelope on the table. Then his gaze drifted past her shoulder toward me. And that's when the air changed. He didn't speak right away, just studied me, my toolbox, my soaked shirt, the way my eyes avoided hers. Maya, try to fill the silence. This is Ethan. I know who he is, the man said quietly. I felt my stomach drop. He turned to her, voice low, but sharp enough to cut through the tension. So that's why you stopped answering my calls. Mark, it's not what you think, he laughed bitterly. It never is it? The room felt too small, the walls too close. I wanted to disappear, to not be the reason her past came crashing back. But something in me refused to walk away. Not yet. Maya didn't do anything wrong, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. He turned on me, eyes narrowing. You think you understand her? You think you're the first one she's tried to save? Maya stepped forward, her tone breaking. Stop it, please. Mark's anger faded into something worse, pity. He's young, Maya. Don't drag him into your ghosts. She flinched. I could see it, that old guilt resurfacing, the kind that had nothing to do with me and everything to do with the life she'd left behind. He placed the envelope on the counter. I'll sign the rest. Do what you want. Then he left, slamming the door behind him. The silence afterward was unbearable. Rain still hammered the windows, but inside, everything felt still, too still. Maya stood there, unmoving, her hand pressed against the counter like she needed it to stay upright. I told you this would happen, she whispered finally. Everything I touched turns into a mess. I stepped closer, shaking my head. No, he's wrong about you. Her eyes lifted, red-rimmed but steady. No, Ethan. He's right about one thing. You are too young. You still believe people can be saved. I want to tell her she was wrong, that I didn't want to be saved. I wanted her. But before I could, her phone buzzed again. A single message flashed across the screen. We need to talk. Someone told me about the boy. She looked up slowly, her face pale. Ethan, she whispered, someone knows. The message on her phone kept glowing between us like a silent accusation. Someone told me about the boy. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at it until the light dimmed and the screen went black. When she finally looked at me, her voice was barely a whisper. It's over, Ethan. The words hit me harder than I expected. Over? What is this? Whatever this almost was. I stepped closer, shaking my head. We didn't even do anything. That doesn't matter, she said, eyes glistening. People don't need proof to ruin you. Or me. Her voice cracked on that last word, me. Like she wasn't afraid for herself, but for the little piece of peace she'd built after everything fell apart. I wanted to tell her I didn't care, that I'd take whatever came with her. But she turned away, gripping the edge of the counter. You think love fixes things, Ethan? It doesn't. It just makes you forget how much they hurt. Her shoulders trembled. She was breaking, and I hated that all I could do was watch. So I did the only thing that felt right. I walked over, gently took her hand, and placed it against my chest. Then don't call it love, I said quietly. Call it whatever you want, but don't pretend it's not real. She looked up then, eyes wide, a tear escaping before she could hide it. For a long, trembling second, she didn't speak. Then her hand slid away from mine. You'll hate me someday, she said, when you realize I was the one who taught you to confuse comfort for love. I wanted to argue, to promise I never would, but her phone buzzed again, another message. The moment shattered. Her lips trembled. You should go. No, I said softly. Not until you tell me you don't feel it too. She didn't. Instead, she walked to the window, watching the rain blur everything outside. You remind me of the boy I used to be in love with, she said finally. The one who believed broken things could still work if you held them long enough. Her voice was calm now, almost peaceful. But I'm not her anymore, Ethan. I can't be. Something in me knew she was right, and that scared me more than losing her. I nodded slowly, picking up my toolbox. The silence between us was the loudest it had ever been. When I reached the door, she turned. For what it's worth, she whispered, you did make things right. Just not the way you meant to. Our eyes met, one last time, and for a moment, it felt like the world had gone still again. I smiled faintly. Then maybe that's enough. Outside, the rain had stopped. The street glistened under the fading light. Wet, quiet, real. I didn't look back, but I didn't have to. Some goodbyes don't sound like endings. They sound like the truth finally finding a place to rest. It's been 4 months since that night. Sometimes, when I'm driving through her part of town, I catch myself slowing down near her street. I never stop, but I always look just long enough to see the same gate, the same window, the same quiet light that spills through the curtains when the sun goes down. She still lives there. I know, because once in a while, I see her car parked outside the cafe we both used to go to. She always sits by the window, a book in her hand, pretending not to look at the door. I do the same, except I don't go in. Maybe that's what growing up really means. Learning to leave something untouched, even when every part of you wants to go back. I never fixed another sink after hers. I quit the job 2 weeks later and started working for a small publishing company downtown. Funny, isn't it? All those afternoons, she used to talk about stories, and now I read them for a living. Every time I edit a manuscript about love, I think of her voice, calm, patient, full of half-truths and lessons I didn't know I needed. She once told me, "People don't fall in love with each other. They fall in love with who they become when the other person is around." I didn't understand it back then. I do now. She made me quieter, more deliberate, more human. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what love is supposed to do. Not last forever, but change you enough that you never go back to who you were before it found you. One evening, I did see her again, by accident. We crossed paths outside a bookstore. The air was cool, and she was carrying a paper bag filled with secondhand novels. She saw me before I could decide what to do. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled, small, gentle, honest. "Still fixing things?" she asked. I said, "Just not with tools anymore." She laughed quietly, that same soft sound that once made my chest ache. "Good. Maybe now you'll learn not everything needs to be repaired." I wanted to say something, that I didn't regret any of it, that she still crossed my mind when it rained, but I didn't. I just nodded, and she reached out, brushing my arm lightly before stepping away. That touch, brief, familiar, final, said everything words couldn't. As she walked off, her voice floated back to me, carried by the wind. "Take care of yourself, Ethan." And for the first time since I'd met her, I didn't feel the need to turn around. Some stories don't end with a kiss. They end with understanding, quiet, steady, and real. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next? More slow burn romances, bittersweet endings, or something entirely different?